What's good, YouTube? It's Akansh over here again. This is my fourth video. I run a cold email lead gen agency on behalf of my clients and myself every single month. We send anywhere between like 300 to 400,000 emails. And so in today's video, what I wanted to do is kind of walk you through my first two clients, how many emails I've sent for them, the type of results I've delivered, and then more importantly, what I've kind of learned from the lack of results. We'll kind of get into that, and what I'm going to be doing moving forward to kind of obviously mitigate this happening in the future. So both my clients, they're in the BPO space. So if you don't know BPO, that's like outsourced talent. When companies go to someone like a BPO firm, they're doing so because rather than hiring someone in-house in the country, it's going to be a lot cheaper for them to be able to do that, offshore. So that's kind of their main value prop. For both these clients combined, I've now done around 8 to 10 campaigns, and across the 8 to 10 campaigns for both of them collectively sent around 17,000 emails, and it says 0 positive replies. I created this image yesterday. I've gotten 1 positive reply now. But for reference, what that means is 1 out of 17,000 replies sent has actually turned positive. Now, for us, typically, if we were to send something like 17,000 emails, we would typically see something like a 2 to 3% reply rate, which means, what is that? That's like 340 to 510, like 500 replies, and then out of those 500 replies, like a solid 50 to 100 would actually end up being positive. So we're looking at substantially worse across the board. And if you kind of like zoom in to the actual results that we've achieved, you can kind of see like the number of sends that we've done. The reply rates aren't the worst, right? When we look at actually, and I'm going to get into like diagnosing this data, what it tells us, the first thing we look at is there something going wrong with deliverability? Like, are these emails even landing in the inbox? And if we kind of look across the board, like 4%, 6%, 2%, 1.5, 1%, we're nothing alarming at all. Like everything's above 1%, which is awesome. So it's landing in the inbox. The biggest thing is actually the discrepancy between what the reply rate is without out of office, which is this column, and then replies with out of office. And if there's such a substantial difference and the positive reply rate is non-existent, it means that what's actually being said in the copy, of course, the offer more specifically, is just garbage. Like it's not resonating, the offer's not dialed in. So that's kind of my diagnosis of the data. And what it leads me to say, yeah, like I mentioned, right, deliverability is definitely not an issue. Actually, initially I thought maybe deliverability could have been the issue, but that's not it. It's really the copy and offer. And so what I'm going to be doing moving forward is 2 things. The first thing, and this is now for all client campaigns, is when I first onboard them, because with these first 2 clients, when I started the first set of campaigns, I launched 2 for both of them. What I was testing is 2 different industries. Now I realize that more than industry, because it's sure, having a very super segmented list, and the more segmented it is, can actually make the, how do we phrase this? Sometimes the list is the message, especially when the list is even more segmented. You can say something that would be only super applicable to them, and therefore that list became the copy. But that's not the biggest driver of any outbound campaign success. It's your offer. And so the first thing I'm going to do moving forward now for any client is actually test multiple different offers to see what actually clicks. So that's the first change I did moving forward with these guys. Went back to the drawing board, spoke with them, be like, and told them like, hey, we need to kind of come up with an offer that converts. And in the conversation of doing this, what I kind of realized is, and this is something I'm going to be changing in my sales process now for new clients, both of these people haven't actually, I don't know about both, but one of them have never cracked outbound, cold outbound before. The last time they brought in a deal was like over a year ago, and it was an inbound. And that is a glaring red flag, because when someone hasn't cracked cold outbound and they're coming to you for you to be able to do that, what they're effectively telling you is, hey, I've never been able to transact money predictably with a stranger. And so I'm kind of tasking you with the responsibility of doing that. So more than sending emails and really kind of building out an outbound channel, you're even validating whether their offer works. And yes, there's going to be some overlap. Obviously, as a marketer, you're going to be required to do that, but it's going to be substantially harder if you're working with a client who's never validated that outbound offer. So that's the first thing. Always asking questions in the sales discovery and in the sales process to figure out, hey, have you guys actually seen some level of proof of concept, some level of success with outbound? Because if they haven't, you don't have like a launch pad, you don't have a testing ground, you don't have like a framework to iterate out of. You're just shooting in the dark and hoping your 5, 6, 7 tests, it doesn't matter really how many tests you do, but you're kind of hoping and praying that they're actually going to convert. So that's the biggest thing I'm actually going to be doing moving forward, right? Kind of as I explained, which is client selection. Really kind of asking those questions in the sales process to understand whether they've seen success and how that, sorry, my dog's barking in the background, and how that kind of ties into when you're starting more as a new agency owner as well, when maybe you don't have the luxury, right, of being able to be super selective. I think it's really a volume game. So you can't be too strict and just say like, okay, if they don't have like 100 sales from cold outbound, I'm not going to work with them. You kind of take those learnings and be like, okay, if they've not seen a sale in 12 months, or if they've never gotten a sale from cold outbound, don't take them on because you're just going to be repeating that mistake. But if they've gotten a sale or two, sure, is that like validating cold outbound? Of course not, right? We're just looking at 1 or 2 sales, but it's something. And that's like enough statistical difference to be able to like take a bet on that. Because there's obviously a balancing act when you're first starting out of like, hey, I need to take on as many people to not only get better at cold email, to not only get better at client selection, but obviously from a revenue standpoint as well. But you're not kind of recommitting those same mistakes. So that's what I'm going to be doing moving forward. Maybe I might even make a video on my own sales process and what I'm doing as well. So stay tuned for that and take care.